Aquarius. If you've been feeling unusually tired, not in your body, but in your spirit, this message is for you. There's something in your life right now that hasn't changed, but you have. And that's why it suddenly feels heavier. This isn't about failure. It's not about giving up. It's about a moment when the universe gently says you don't need to carry this anymore. A door is closing not to punish you, but because a new path is already looking for you. If this resonates, leave a comment and say, "I'm ready." Stay with me because what you're about to hear may explain exactly why letting go right now changes everything. Aquarius, stay with me for a moment. I want to speak to you as if you're the only one listening right now. There's a subtle kind of knowing that's been walking beside you lately. Not something that demands attention. More like a quiet presence that sits with you in the early morning or shows up in the pauses between conversations. You notice it when you wake up and realize you don't rush the way you used to. You notice it when certain noises, certain demands, certain expectations feel just a little too sharp against your skin. It's as if your inner world has softened, and anything that doesn't match that softness suddenly feels out of place. You might not talk about this with anyone. People see you functioning, showing up, doing what needs to be done. But inside, something is reorganizing itself. Not breaking, rearranging. You've lived long enough to know the difference. There's a part of you now that pauses before saying yes. A part that listens to how your body responds, how your breath shifts, how your chest tightens or relaxes. You didn't always trust these signals. You were taught to override them, to push through, to be strong by enduring. But strength has taken on a different meaning for you. It looks quieter now, more intentional. Sometimes you catch yourself wondering how long you've been moving out of habit rather than truth. How many things you kept alive simply because they once mattered, or because leaving felt like erasing history, and then you feel that gentle ache. Not regret. Recognition. There's no urgency here, no pressure to decide anything all at once. Just an awareness that your inner compass has started to recalibrate. And once that happens, nothing feels the same again. You may feel moments of guilt for wanting less noise, less obligation, less emotional weight. But this desire isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about returning to yourself. Think of it like standing at the edge of water at dusk. The old shoreline is still behind you. Familiar, comforting in its own way. But ahead, the light reflects differently, and something inside you is drawn to that shimmer. You don't have to understand where it leads yet. You don't even have to name it. Just noticing the pull is enough for now. Let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you felt truly spacious inside, without explaining yourself, without holding everything together for everyone else? That memory, even if it feels distant, is still alive in you. It's quietly reminding you of who you are when you're not carrying more than you should. What's happening now isn't a crisis. It's a threshold, one that doesn't announce itself with chaos, but with a soft invitation to listen more closely. And as you listen, you may begin to sense that this moment is not asking you to become someone new, but to come home to a version of yourself that has been patiently waiting. Stay here with me, because as this awareness deepens, another layer begins to reveal itself, one that brings both mystery and light, and gently shows you why this inner shift is happening exactly now. Aquarius, there's something tender I want to say to you now, something that often goes unspoken. The reason this feels heavier than you expected is not because you're confused. It's because you see clearly, and clarity can ache in ways confusion never does. You remember how much you poured into this? Not just time, but intention, hope. Versions of yourself that tried harder than they should have. You stayed present when it would have been easier to disappear. You kept faith when the results were slow, uneven, uncertain. That kind of devotion leaves an imprint. And walking away from it can feel like walking away from a chapter of your own identity. You might catch yourself revisiting old moments, quietly editing them in your mind. Wondering if one more conversation, one more adjustment, one more stretch of patience could finally tip things in your favor. That thought doesn't come from weakness. It comes from loyalty. And that matters. But there's a subtle truth emerging now. Something you can't unfeel once you notice it. The version of you who committed to this was carrying different dreams, different limits, different expectations of themselves. You didn't fail that version of you. You fulfilled them. What you're sensing now is the natural tension between who you had to be and who you no longer need to remain. That tension shows up at as hesitation, as the strange grief of outgrowing something before it completely falls apart. People rarely talk about that kind of grief. The grief of leaving while things are still standing, while there is still affection, while there is still history worth honoring. But you, Aquarius, you were never meant to live only in the past just because it once made sense. There's a quiet intelligence in you that notices when effort turns into obligation, when loyalty turns into self-abandonment, when staying becomes more painful than the uncertainty of stepping forward. You may feel moments of resistance in your body, a tightening in your chest, a fatigue that sleep doesn't fully touch. These are not signs that you're doing something wrong. They're messages asking you to listen more gently. Let me ask you something softly. If no one needed anything from you right now, if no expectations were placed on your shoulders, what would your inner voice say you need? You don't have to answer out loud. Just notice what surfaces. What makes this moment especially tender is that you're not being pushed away. You're being invited forward. And invitations can feel unsettling when you've grown used to proving your worth by how much you endure. You are learning that you don't have to suffer to justify a new beginning. That growth does not require collapse. Sometimes it arrives quietly, with a hand on your back, guiding you toward a horizon you haven't fully imagined yet. There is wisdom in how carefully you're moving through this. You're not burning bridges. You're understanding which ones no longer lead where your spirit wants to go. And as this understanding settles deeper, you may begin to sense something else stirring. Not urgency, not pressure, but a faint, steady pull toward a different kind of future. One that doesn't ask you to hold yourself together so tightly. One that meets you with more ease than effort. Stay with me. Because once this truth lands in your body, another realization begins to glow beneath it, and it gently reshapes the way you see what comes next. Aquarius, there is a softness settling in now, and it changes the way you listen to your own life. You are not rushing toward conclusions anymore. You are observing, letting moments speak before you respond. There is a calm in that. A maturity that only comes from having lived through enough cycles to recognize their shape before they complete themselves. You start to notice how certain conversations linger in your body long after they end. How some environments leave you feeling strangely hollow, even when nothing obvious went wrong. You notice how your energy reacts before your mind has time to explain it away. This awareness is quiet. It does not demand action. It simply asks for honesty. You are seeing patterns now that once stayed hidden beneath hope and effort. Patterns of giving more than you receive. Of adjusting yourself to fit spaces that never fully expanded to meet you. Of staying present out of principle rather than genuine alignment. What makes this moment different is that you are not judging yourself for it. You are not angry at the past. There is no need to rewrite history. There is just a deep understanding that what sustained you before no longer nourishes who you are becoming. You might feel a strange mix of emotions rising and falling. Not dramatic sadness, not sharp relief, but something subtler, a quiet clarity that feels both grounding and unsettling. It is the feeling of waking up inside your own life. You realize now that wisdom does not always arrive through pain. Sometimes it arrives through stillness. Through the moment you stop convincing yourself that effort alone is a measure of worth. Through the realization that harmony matters as much as resilience. There is something uniquely Aquarian about this phase. You have always been able to see beyond the present moment, to imagine futures others could not yet feel. But now that vision is turning inward. You are asking yourself deeper questions. Not about what is possible, but about what is sustainable. Let me ask you something gently. If you were no longer trying to be understood by anyone else, what truth about your life would you finally allow yourself to accept? You do not need to answer it immediately. Just notice how your body responds to the question. The pause, the breath, the sensation of recognition. You are not pulling away from life. You are stepping closer to its essence. Choosing experiences that feel honest rather than impressive. Choosing connections that feel mutual rather than maintained. This awakening does not require an announcement. It unfolds quietly. In the choices you reconsider. In the invitations you decline without explanation. In the moments you choose rest over proving something to the world. And with each small act of listening to yourself, something else begins to emerge. A steadier sense of direction. Not because everything is clear, but because you trust yourself enough to move without forcing certainty. There is light here, not the blinding kind, but the kind that glows softly and stays. It reveals just enough of the path ahead to remind you that you are not lost. Stay with me a little longer. Because as this quiet awakening settles into your bones, you may begin to notice a shift in how you relate to what feels familiar, and something unexpected starts to loosen its grip, making room for a future that feels lighter than you imagined. Aquarius, there is a quiet comfort that has been holding you for a long time. Not joy, not excitement. Just something familiar enough to lean against when the world feels loud. And at first, that familiarity felt like safety. It gave you a rhythm, a sense of knowing what comes next. A place where nothing needed to be explained. But lately, that same familiarity has begun to feel thin, like a well-worn coat that no longer keeps you warm, even though it still looks the same from the outside. You may not have noticed it all at once. It shows up in small moments. In the way your enthusiasm fades more quickly. In the way you go quiet instead of curious. In the way you keep showing up, but something essential in you stays behind. This is not because you are ungrateful. It is because you have outgrown the version of yourself who once fit comfortably here. There is a particular ache that comes from staying simply because something has history. Because you remember who you were when it began. Because leaving feels like erasing proof that those years mattered. But here is a truth that deserves to be spoken gently. Nothing meaningful is erased by growth. What mattered still matters. It just does not get to decide your future. You have a deep respect for continuity, for honoring what has been built. That is part of your integrity. But there is a quiet cost when loyalty turns into self-abandonment. You start to feel it in subtle ways. Your voice becomes measured. Your ideas feel smaller before you even share them. Your inner world grows richer, while your outer life stays exactly the same. And that gap begins to stretch you thin. Let me ask you something softly. If you stripped away the history, the explanations, the effort already spent, would you still choose this place with the person you are today? You do not need to answer immediately. Just notice what happens in your body when you imagine it. There is no judgment here. Staying because something once mattered is deeply human. It speaks to your capacity for attachment, for memory, for honoring the past. But you are also learning that familiarity can quietly numb you. It can make you mistake comfort for alignment. And alignment is what your spirit is asking for now. You are not being called to reject your life. You are being asked to reconnect with yourself inside it. To notice where you have been shrinking to keep things stable. To recognize where your growth has been waiting patiently for permission to take up space. There is a different kind of safety available to you now. Not the safety of knowing exactly how things will unfold, but the safety of trusting your inner compass. Of knowing that even if the ground shifts, you can stand within yourself. This realization may feel unsettling at first. It asks you to loosen your grip on what once defined you. But there is relief in it too. A quiet exhale. The sense that you no longer need to pretend that familiarity alone is enough. And as this truth settles in, something else begins to stir beneath it. A readiness you did not plan for. A subtle courage that does not push, but waits patiently for the right moment. Stay with me. Because when you stop staying out of habit, life has a way of revealing what has been waiting for you all along, just beyond what feels known. Aquarius, there is a moment that doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come with chaos or drama. It arrives quietly. Almost respectfully. You feel it before you understand it. A tightening in your chest. A pause in your breath. That sense that something inside you has reached its limit, even if your mind is still trying to negotiate. This moment is not here to hurt you. It comes because your soul is done whispering. For a long time, you have been carrying things gently. Other people's expectations, unfinished conversations, unspoken compromises you told yourself were temporary. You carried them with grace because that is who you are. But lately, the weight feels different, heavier, less willing to be ignored. It shows up when you are alone at night, when the world finally goes quiet and you can no longer distract yourself from what you feel. Soon, something brings it all into focus. Maybe a sentence that lands differently than before. Maybe a silence that says more than words ever could. Maybe a simple realization that rises up and refuses to go back down. And in that moment, you hear yourself think, or maybe even say out loud, I can't keep doing this. This is not weakness. This is clarity. Aquarius, this is not where you break. This is where you stop pretending you can carry what was never meant to last forever. What falls away now was not a failure. It was a chapter that did its work. You are not losing control. You are reclaiming direction. There is a difference, and your spirit knows it. You may feel a wave of emotions all at once. Relief tangled with sadness. Certainty mixed with grief. That is natural. When something becomes clear, it doesn't mean it stops mattering. It simply stops owning you. Let me ask you something gently. If you allowed yourself to be honest without explaining it to anyone, what truth would finally come out of your mouth? You don't have to share it yet. Just notice how it feels to let it exist. This turning point asks you to trust yourself more than your fear of disruption. To believe that clarity is kinder than endurance. To understand that staying silent to keep peace has been costing you your inner alignment. And you are done paying that price. There is a deep intelligence in you that knows when it is time. Not the kind that rushes. The kind that waits, observes, and then moves with precision. That is the intelligence guiding you now. Nothing about this moment is accidental. It arrives because you are ready to choose honesty over habit, presence over persistence, truth over tolerance. And as this realization settles, you may notice something surprising, a sense of space opening up, as if life is quietly making room for what comes next. Stay here with me for a little longer, because once everything becomes clear, the path forward does not demand force. It begins to reveal itself, one honest step at a time. Aquarius, after that moment of truth settles in, something subtle begins to shift, not outside of you, inside. It feels quieter than expectation, almost gentle, like the air changing before dawn, when the world has not woken yet but everything is already different. You may notice you are no longer reaching the way you used to, no longer forcing answers, no longer scanning the horizon with urgency. There is a new kind of stillness in you now, and from that stillness, something begins to respond. This new path is not chasing you with noise or promises. It does not beg for your attention. It waits patient, aware that you are finally listening from a deeper place. What is powerful here is this. Nothing new appears because you tried harder. It appears because you softened, because you stopped leaking energy into places that never truly saw you, because you made room without demanding anything fill it immediately. And in that open space, life starts to speak differently. You may find your curiosity drifting in unexpected directions, a thought that keeps returning without pressure, a conversation that lingers longer than it should, an idea that feels strangely familiar, like it once belonged to you and is only now finding its way back. This is not coincidence. This is resonance. Aquarius, you are not being pulled towards something random. You are being met where you are now, by something that fits the shape of who you have become. There is a lightness to this direction, not because it lacks responsibility, but because it no longer requires you to abandon yourself to walk it. It feels honest. It feels spacious. It feels like you can breathe while moving forward. And maybe that surprises you, because for so long, growth meant struggle, effort, proving, enduring. But this path does not ask you to perform strength. It recognizes it. Let me ask you something softly. When was the last time a possibility made you feel more like yourself instead of less? You do not need to decide anything yet. Just notice what draws your attention without exhausting you. Notice what invites your presence instead of demanding your sacrifice. This is how alignment speaks, not loudly, but consistently. You might feel moments of doubt drift in. That is human. The mind likes familiarity, even when familiarity was heavy. But your body knows the difference now. Your energy responds differently. Your intuition no longer whispers, it hums. And that hum is guiding you. This path will not look impressive to everyone. It is not meant to. It is designed for your nervous system, for your values, for the future version of you who no longer wants to survive life, but participate in it fully. As you continue to walk with this awareness, you may notice how doors open without force, how timing feels less hostile, how effort feels cleaner, more intentional. You are not late, you are not behind. You are right on time for the life that matches you now. Stay present here, because as you keep honoring what feels true, the path will keep revealing itself, step by step, not to test you, but to walk with you. Aquarius, as you keep walking with that quieter confidence, something else begins to reveal itself. Not as a grand entrance, more like a gentle presence stepping closer when your shoulders finally relax. There is a moment when you realize you are not as alone as you once believed. Not because the world suddenly filled with people, but because you stopped carrying everything in silence. For a long time, you thought independence meant handling it all by yourself, being strong, being capable, being the one others lean on. That has always been part of your nature. But now something softer is unfolding inside you. You are learning that strength can also mean allowing support to find you. It might show up quietly. A friend who listens without trying to fix you. A conversation that arrives at exactly the right time, even if it seems ordinary at first. A moment where you feel seen without having to explain yourself. These are not accidents. They are responses. When you stopped resisting change, your energy shifted, and the world adjusted accordingly. Life does that. It meets you where you are willing to be real. There is a subtle protection around you right now. Not the kind that keeps you from uncertainty, but the kind that steadies you while you step into it. You may feel it as reassurance without words. A sense that even if you do not know the full map, you are not walking blind. Aquarius, you do not have to earn this support. You do not have to prove you deserve it. It arrives because you finally made room for it. You are beginning to understand something important. Isolation was never your destiny. It was a strategy you used when you did not feel safe enough to receive. And now, safety is growing inside you. This does not mean leaning on others to carry your path. It means allowing companionship along it. Witnesses, allies, People who remind you of who you are when your mind drifts into doubt. Let me ask you this gently. What if letting someone walk beside you does not make you weaker, but more whole? There is a maturity in you now that knows how to discern support from dependency. You are not giving away your power. You are sharing your presence. And that changes everything. You may notice that help arrives just when you stop demanding it. Advice appears when you are ready to hear it. Encouragement comes when you finally rest from self-criticism. This is the universe speaking your language. Subtle, intelligent, respectful of your autonomy. You are still the one choosing your direction, but you are no longer doing it in a vacuum. And that makes the journey lighter. As you move forward, trust this. You are held in ways you cannot always see. By timing, by connection, by an unseen order that knows your heart better than you think. You do not need to rush. You do not need to harden yourself. You only need to stay open enough to notice who and what shows up when you stop doing everything alone. Because this path you are on now was never meant to be walked in isolation. And you are finally allowing that truth to meet you. Aquarius, there is a quiet stillness settling around you now. Not empty, not heavy, but precise. It feels almost strange how calm this moment is, as if life waited until you could finally hear yourself think, until your heart stopped arguing with your intuition, until your mind softened enough to listen instead of defend. If this shift had arrived years ago, you might have rushed it. You would have tried to explain it. You might have second-guessed yourself into staying small or leaving for the wrong reasons. And if it came much later, there is a chance you would have disappeared inside responsibility, inside loyalty that asked too much of you, inside roles that slowly erased your truth. But now feels different. You are not being pushed. You are being met. This timing is not dramatic because it does not need to be. It is quiet because it is aligned. Nothing is being taken from you. Nothing is being ripped away. What is happening is a gentle correction. You have reached a point where clarity feels natural, not forced. Not borrowed from anyone else's expectations. It comes from lived experience. From nights where you sat with yourself longer than usual. From moments where you noticed what no longer felt honest. This is why the fear feels smaller now. Not gone but no longer in charge. You are choosing differently because you respect yourself more. Because you understand your own limits. Because guilt no longer sounds like love to you. There is a maturity in this moment that cannot be rushed. It only arrives when you are ready to take responsibility not for saving everything but for honoring your own life. Letting go right now is not dramatic. It is clean. It is conscious. It is you finally trusting that you do not need chaos to justify change. You may notice how the universe is not shouting at you anymore. There are no ultimatums, no panic, just a steady sense of rightness that keeps returning no matter how many times you question it. That is alignment, and alignment does not beg. It waits. Aquarius, you are not ending something. You are allowing your life to move again, forward, with intention, with dignity. There is relief in realizing you do not have to prove why you are ready. Readiness speaks for itself. It feels like peace instead of urgency, like clarity instead of explanation. Let me ask you something softly. What if this moment is not asking you to be brave, but simply to be honest? Because honesty is what opens the door now, not force, not urgency. Your life begins to respond differently when you choose yourself without apology. When your decisions come from self-respect rather than fear of loss. When you trust that what belongs to you will not require self-betrayal. This timing is precise because you are. You have grown into the kind of person who can walk forward without burning bridges behind you and without carrying what no longer fits. And as you stand here, in this calm knowing, there is a sense that something meaningful is already in motion. Not rushing toward you, but waiting for you to take that next honest step. Because the direction ahead, the one that truly belongs to you, is finally open. And this time you are ready to walk it as yourself. Aquarius, before you go anywhere else tonight, stay with me here for just a moment. Take a slow breath. Let it land. Everything you have felt while listening was not placed in you by accident. That quiet recognition. That soft yes in your chest. That moment where your shoulders dropped without you realizing why. This is what alignment feels like when it finally arrives without force. You are not late. You are not behind. You are right on time for the version of your life that requires honesty instead of endurance. And here is what may surprise you most. Nothing ahead of you needs to be fought for. What is meant for you will respond to the way you move now, with clarity, with boundaries, with self-respect. You do not need to convince the universe anymore. It has been listening the whole time. If something loosened its grip on you tonight, let it go gently. If something inside you stood up a little straighter, honor that. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about finally living as the person you have quietly been protecting inside. Aquarius, you are allowed to choose peace without explaining yourself. You are allowed to change direction without calling it failure. You are allowed to trust your timing even when others do not understand it yet. And if this message found you at the exact moment you needed reassurance, I want you to tell me. Leave a comment below with one word that describes how you feel right now. Or simply write, "I trust myself." When you do that, you are not just speaking to me. You are speaking to every Aquarius listening who is walking this same threshold. If this space feels safe, if these words feel familiar, stay connected. Subscribe. Come back. Because this journey is not finished. Another message is already forming. Another layer is ready to be revealed when the timing opens again. Until then, walk gently, choose honestly, and remember, you are guided, you are supported, and you are exactly where you need to be. The path is moving with you now.